You asked, how can I say exercise is so powerful? Well, what do you think is the hazard ratio when I compare someone at the top 2.5% to someone at the bottom 25%?
In terms of VO2 max?
Yes.
Top 2% versus the bottom 25. Bottom 25%, that's quite big. Top 2% is quite narrow. I'd say 1.5, which is what, 50%?
So you think it's less important than strength? Because we've just established for strength, it's about 3.
So I'm increasing it now because I was so wrong on strength.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Well, what would I have said had you not told me the strength one? So,
by the way, I think your guess is a completely reasonable guess because the answer is so absurd.
I'm going to say 1.5 hazard ratio.
It's 5.
5. So
which means 400% difference in all-cause mortality.
If you
when you compare the fittest 2.5% to the least fit 25%.
Wow, so it makes a huge difference.
So this is why I can say with absolute certainty, nothing compares to exercise. Nothing compares to having a high VO2 max, high muscle mass, and high muscle strength. They are more beneficial for you than any bad thing you can think of is bad for you.
Why is the muscle mass piece so important and the strength piece? Why is that causing me to stay alive?
I think there are several reasons. As you get, so there's I put them in 2 buckets, structural and metabolic. Let's start with the latter. Muscles are where you dispose of glucose. So glucose regulation is one of the most important metabolic functions of the body. Our ability to metabolize glucose and regulate glucose levels is central to our existence on this planet. And when we get it just a little bit wrong, we go to hell in a handbasket. That's what type 2 diabetes is. Type 2 diabetes, raging type 2 diabetes, only means you have an extra 5 grams of blood sugar, 1 teaspoon in your circulation. That's it. The difference between you and someone with type 2 diabetes so bad that they're going to get their digits amputated is an extra 1 teaspoon of glucose in the bloodstream. That's how critical it is that we regulate our blood sugar. And the most important part of blood sugar regulation is having muscles that are big enough to put the glucose into and that are insulin sensitive enough to respond to the signal of insulin.
And glucose is stored in just a couple of places in our body,
It's
right?
only stored in the liver and in the muscles, but the muscles store 80% of it.
So muscles are really, really good for glucose regulation because it gives the sugar more place to hide.
That's right. So the other reason muscle mass and strength is so important is as we age, fragility and frailty become an enormous liability in death. There's a figure in that book that shows the mortality associated with falling. And it becomes catastrophic once you hit the age of 65. Once you hit the age of 65, if you fall, which is pretty likely, and you break your hip or your femur, the long bone in your leg, there's a 15 to 30% chance you will be dead within the next 12 months.
Really?
Yes. It's insane.
Because you become sedentary.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons for it, but certainly a loss of function is a big one. You can also just die as a result of hitting your head. Yeah. You can die from a fat embolism or a blood clot. You can die from sepsis. You can die from, a heart attack because there's so many things that can kind of kill you in response to it. But even the people, the 70 to 85% of people who don't die, 50% of them will experience a significant loss of function that never recovers after. So this issue of sarcopenia, which is loss of muscle mass, and frailty and fragility become the absolute keeper of death for people once they reach the 7th decade of life. Again, if you're 30 years old, it's impossible to fathom this stuff because you're indestructible.
Yeah.
Even at my age, I feel indestructible and I'm 50. But this changes. And we have to do all we can to ward it off. So that's why muscle mass matters so much.